Today I'm going to show you guys how to flip a simple dresser in just one day. It's a mix of laminate and solid wood, so it's a perfect candidate to paint. The first thing I do with every single flip is remove the hardware, whether I'm keeping it or replacing it. It gets so dirty underneath, so they have to come off. Once the hardware is removed, I decided I wanted to trim the base to give it a more modernized look by cutting out all of these little details that stick out. I wanted to square them out, but I'm simply just taking a level to get a super straight line and marking it with a Sharpie so I know where I'm cutting when I get my jigsaw out. I did this process on the entire front and the sides as well. Of course, I didn't video them, but this is what it looks like. After I made sure my lines were level and where I wanted them, it was time to cut with the jigsaw. Another thing you want to keep in mind when using and working with a jigsaw is that there is a variety of different blades that you can buy. So if you know you're cutting through wood, be sure to get a wood cutting blade. This tool is super easy for beginners because you can control the speed, you can control pretty much everything on it, which makes it very safe, especially if you're not comfortable with tools. This is a good one to start out with. It seems like it takes me forever, but honestly, this is pretty quick, and I'm very anal about getting a straight line and following the lines that I have made, so I go extra slow with it. That way I'm in full control and the tool doesn't get out of control. I did this entire process on each side, and then I chose this hardware to avoid having to drill new holes. Now it's time to clean. I use this TSP I get from any hardware store, and I use a dilution bottle so I can make sure to keep track of my dilution. I use a plain bucket full of water, as well as from the Dollar Tree. I like to get these little scrubbies because they're cheap to replace and easy to use, and a microfiber cloth because again, they're reusable and easy to replace. I spray the TSP on the entire thing heavily at that, just because I like to get in with my scrubber and make sure that I'm lifting off any crud or dirt that's been left on this dresser. And even though a dresser may look clean, I promise you 9 times out of 10, it's going to be disgusting. Once I'm done using my scrubber, I like to just take the microfiber cloth that's dipped in the water and wipe everything off. I do remove the drawers as well. That way I can make sure I get all of the spots that I missed with the overhang of a drawer. Repeating the same process, making sure that that is cleaned as well because your paint will not stick if it's dirty. After the drawers are removed, this is what you can expect to find. Just random stuff, clumps of hair, dirt, everything. So I just get in with my little vacuum, clean it all out because it is so disgusting in dressers sometimes. You really never know what you're going to find in a dresser. This one was mild compared to other ones, but it still needs cleaned regardless. I also vacuum the insides of every drawer as well. That way it's less that I have to mess with later on when I'm lining the drawers. Next, I'm going to show you why I love the Surf Prep sander for prepping. They're perfect for flat surfaces, but also for the curved surfaces. You can purchase a variety of these foam abrasives to make sure that when you're sanding, you don't strip down any of the curves or details that are on your piece. But before sanding, I need to fix this little corner chip. What I do is I just take painter's tape to kind of make a guide for my Bondo. That way I don't have Bondo dripping down and I don't make myself more work. After about 15 minutes, I just remove the tape and then get to sanding. I just need to sand it back into shape. And I'm using a 180 grit to do so. A 180 grit is that perfect medium sanding grit. You don't want too low of a grit that it damages the Bondo. You want the smooth look, but you also need one that isn't too high due to the Bondo being really rough. Moving on from that, I go ahead and give the entire piece of scuff sand. This is where I said it is glorious to have one of these Surf Preps, because look at that foam abrasive getting into those curves without actually stripping them like a regular sander would. The foam abrasives also come in multiple grits, so if you need a rougher grit, they have them, softer grit, they have them. They just have it all, and I love it because I feel that having this sander really speeds up my prep time, because normally I would have hand sanded all of this detail. It is one of those investments where if you love to do furniture and you want to make this a business, I think this is one of those tools that is an absolute need if you're doing pieces at a higher volume. Once I'm done with the details, I just go ahead and change it out for the flat surface one so I can get all of the drawer fronts. When I scuff sand, I aim to do anywhere between a 200 to a 220 grit, pending my surface. Now this surface wasn't too glossy, so I wasn't very worried about high grit. Now this top is a different story. I went in with a 120 with this because it is a laminate top, which means it can be a bit harder for paint to adhere if you do not prep it right. I will be priming it, but I need to make sure that I can even get the primer to stick correctly, and a lower grit will solve that problem. Once all of my scuff sanding is done, I give it a quick wipe, and then I'm going in with primer. This is my go-to primer. It is the Bin Shellac by Zinsser. I apply my primer using a roller. This has been my easiest method so far. I know there's a lot of people who like to spray it, and that's fine, but for me, I feel that that's even more work. I'd rather just use this roller, and then when I'm done with it, change it out and throw the old one away. Versus when you spray this Bin Shellac in particular, you have to use ammonia to rid the rest of it and clean it properly. If you're spraying a water-based primer, which I have used my sprayer for that, it is a lot simpler, but again, you still have to clean a sprayer versus roll and throw. I like to prime with the drawers out as well. It's just easier to get into all of the drawer lips and surrounding areas versus trying to prime it with them in, and then you have to take them out anyways to prime where your drawer would be covering. And the nice part is, if for some reason, like me, you roll and then you accidentally go too far and you hit the sides of your drawers, all you have to do is just sand it off and it's gone. So it's nothing permanent that you have to worry about. I give my primer about 2 hours to dry before I go in with a 400 grit sanding pad. This helps with any dirt or dust that may have collected into the primer while it was wet. As you can see here, it comes right off without taking the primer off. Plus, it's a good tester to see if your primer is adhering correctly, because a 400 grit should not remove your primer. Next up was choosing a paint. I love to use Fusion Mineral paints. It's one of my favorite paints. I've tried others and have yet to find one I absolutely love more than Fusion. So for now, this is my go-to, and I selected Coal Black. Now, I know I said I'm not a fan of spraying my primer, but I am a humongous fan of spraying paint and top coats. I really like to have that smooth and clean factory finish on my pieces, and spraying has been the easiest way for me to get those results. When spraying paint, you need to make sure that you strain it, whether it's a fresh can or not. You never know if there's going to be sediments or clumps or anything at the bottom of your paint. I allow that to strain through before adding in just a little bit of water, and then after that, it's time to put my sprayer together. Today, I'll be spraying with the Cobalt cordless sprayer. This is a new one to me, but a very easy one to learn. And I love not having to worry about dragging a cord through my paint, which I have done more times than I would like to admit. Taking a closer look, I love the sprayer simply because not only is it cordless, but you can choose the depth of your spray patterns, which way you want to spray it. Everything on this is adjustable, and it is great because every single paint I have worked with that's different all sprays different, and you need a sprayer that can do it all. I love the way that it sprays and how lightweight it is. It's very easy to work with, like I had said prior, easy to clean, easy to set up, and it's very good for beginners. If you're just getting into spraying paint, I do suggest this one. I keep my paint flow on the absolute lowest setting you can go because I like to do very light coats versus heavy coats, because then you run into drips and just the consistency of the thicker coats isn't what I'm looking for. I did apply a total of 3 light coats to completely cover up my primer and get the coverage that I needed. I did also sand between each paint coat with a 400 grit, just very lightly to make sure that there's no dust particles that may have landed in my paint. After allowing yet another 2 hours to let my final coat of paint dry, I went ahead and sprayed on my top coat. I'm just spraying polyacrylic mixed in with a little bit of my leftover paint to make sure I had no imperfections. Then I went ahead and applied all of the new hardware. I really love that I went with these to avoid having to drill any extra holes. And plus, like I stated, this was a one-day makeover, so here it is finished. Something about black paint and all new black hardware really gives it that classic yet timeless look, along with that nice flush and cut base. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe.